Okay, so basically, yeah, I'm Andy Gumbrecht. I work for TomEE Tribe. TomEE Tribe are basically the commercial support providers behind the Apache TomEE project. If you don't know what Apache TomEE is, it's a sister project to Apache Tomcat. We basically take the Tomcat and turn this into an EE application server. And MicroProfile is something that we've started to dig into in our community side. So, go to my next slide. So everyone pretty much knows about EE. I've been playing with EE since, say, around 2008, 2009. I actually joined the Apache TomEE project in 2009. Just before EE6 was basically released, and we started to think along the lines of, you know, what are we going to do with our application server? Prior to being Apache TomEE, we were actually OpenEJB. We were an OpenEJB 3.1 container, and we kind of took that and added it to an Apache Tomcat. So we don't actually change any Tomcat code whatsoever. We're just extending their public API. And we've added all the EE features within what Oracle called the web profile, which I'll explain in a minute. EE's been around a long time. If anyone actually jumped in at J2EE, which was my unfortunate entry the very first time I touched EE, it was awful. I think anyone that was actually around at the time and was using this technology at the time that was in for a kind of a shock, and it didn't do EE any favors. It was very difficult, huge amounts of boilerplate. But yeah, with any release, obviously things get noticed, and you can see through the the release process that there were quick successions or successive versions released. But where things really became EE, as far as I'm concerned today, is Java EE6. EE6 had really fixed everything that was wrong with the previous versions of EE. So if you've used J2EE in the past and you're actually, you know, interested in what is Java EE today, don't start at anything less than EE6. Obviously EE7's released, so I would actually go for that. It was really nice to see at Java 1 recently that EE8 was a huge subject. One of the reasons we've actually started the MicroProfile, and again I'll move on to that in a minute, but one of the reasons we started was because of discussions around EE8 and its lack of movement within the community. I've always been an advocate of EE. I think you know, EE is with us to stay for sure, but there was this brief period where the community had kind of died around it a bit. And I was hearing things like, oh, EE's dead, and, you know, EE's certainly not going to be anything we want to hear about in the future because Oracle have completely lost interest in it. Well, anyone that's just attended Java 1, and unfortunately I didn't get to go to Java 1 this year, but anyone that did attend Java 1 this year, certainly the people that were there and everyone that was looking in from the outside, EE8 was just huge, absolutely huge. So anyone who is in any doubt of whether Oracle are actually going to be moving the EE profile along, they don't need to be any doubt anymore. Oracle have totally backed Java EE8. And so we're basically here with our MicroProfile, and this is a kind of advance which we hope to bring back to the JCP community once we've actually defined our goals. So what's in a profile? Basically, EE is a collection of technologies, and Oracle, they defined years and years ago the full profile, and over several years that became rather outdated. Some of the technologies that were in the full profile were not being used by everybody, and so Oracle actually released them the web profile. Now, the web profile is nothing more than a reduction in the technologies included within an application server. And so Apache TomEE became certified under the web profile in 2011. And it contains actually more than just the web profile. The web profile technologies are the minimum required standard to certify the application server. So what's in a TomEE? Here's our table. You can actually go to the website, which you'll find at Apache.org. Just search for TomEE at Apache. And this table basically lays out the versions that we're currently offering. So this is the today of Apache TomEE. Up on the top left, we're basically starting with a Tomcat. This is just going to give us Java servlets and Java server pages. Obviously, that's quite a limited amount of technology within an application server. And so people tend to add more. And it's not too difficult to take a naked Tomcat and add a few of these other technologies. It becomes increasingly more difficult the more technologies you want to sew together. And so what we've done at Apache TomEE is we've removed all this groundwork that's required to sew in the minimum amount of technologies to deliver the web profile. And this is basically Apache TomEE. So you can see just in the very basic version of Apache TomEE, we're adding all these technologies into the package. And so you're actually getting a hell of a lot more than you're going to get with a regular Tomcat. Now, because we don't change a single line of code in Tomcat, anyone who's familiar with Tomcat is instantly going to be familiar with TomEE. There's, in my opinion, absolutely no reason why a Tomcat user can't switch to TomEE literally from day to day. If you've got an application that's running in Tomcat, as a community member, I would kind of guarantee that your application is going to run in a TomEE. And if it doesn't, then I would ask you to get to us at the community, and we would fix that. That would be a problem. But we know that TomEE's stable. It's been around a long time. And yeah, we have different flavors with more and more technologies added to them. The one we're going to be focusing on today is TomEE JAX-RS, or the web profile. So TomEE JAX-RS is what is today defined as a web profile plus JAX-RS. So why can't we use our application server? Well, there's no reason why we can't continue to use our application server, even though the market is moving towards cloud-based applications. Basically, people are saying, we have an application server, and we have a monolithic application running on this application server. And every time we want to upgrade this, then we're having to redeploy our application on multiple application servers and cluster the thing. And cloud is just a way of enabling this in a dynamic fashion. So basically, you'll start with one node, and as the traffic increases, you'll get 2 nodes, 3 nodes, and you'll start load balancing across your application server. The step towards microservices is actually taking that monolithic application that you're replicating today, and just breaking it down into smaller, more configurable parts. So rather than replicating your entire monolithic application, we're actually taking out core elements of that application and creating what we call microservices. And our application will call those microservices. That basically means we can identify patterns within our application where the load balancing is required. We would extract that into a microservice, and then we could literally load balance the microservice rather than the application. So we might be taking several thousand hits on the front page, but they're all calling a service in the background. And so we can scale that service so that it can cope with that traffic rather than scale the whole application. So I'm just going to go really, really quickly into some code. In fact, it's not going to even be code. It's just a project. It's really, really simple. I just want to show you what TomEE is today in regards to a microservice. You can go online and download this Apache TomEE starter project, and the links are included on this page, which you'll obviously be able to download later. There's nothing more to a microservice than packaging everything together and deploying it. So I'm just going to literally take this code, and deploy it. need to copy my link here, because I can never remember the full URL. So this would be the link that you would copy, and I'm going to basically paste this into a console and download this start project. You can see it's a really, really tiny project. It's downloaded already. I can CD into my starter directory, and I'm just going to do a Maven. I'm going to package the application, and I'm going to send it to a TomEE plugin. So the TomEE plugin is part of the solution. And I'm going to create an executable. So literally in 2 steps, I'll run this. This will compile the application. It's actually going to run the tests. I could skip the tests at this point, but I want to show you, you know, basically how quickly this application will download, run, compile, run all the tests, and create an executable file. So this could be your application. This is a very good starter application to jump into. And here you can see the final zipping of the product. And then to run this, we've now just created a jar file. So I'm going to literally run this from the line. It's in our target directory. And it's the name of the war file that's been created, plus minus exec jar. So what we've done is we've taken the TomEE application, we've created a project, packaged that on GitHub for you. You download that, compile it, and then run the executable file. So I'm just going to run this. And that's our application now started up. So literally within the space of a minute-ish, you can download a full-featured application, deploy it as a microservice in your environment. So I can just take an endpoint. So I'm looking in my log here, and for example, I've got this endpoint. I'm just going to copy this endpoint. Paste that into a browser. And this is basically just then throwing out the JSON that was created to list the phones. So you can see this application is running in the background. It does in fact have a small user interface. So there's nothing to say that your microservice can't have a user interface. You might have a small user interface for configuring your service. But literally within the space of a minute, we've deployed our very first TomEE microservice. And we go back to our presentation. And so in these few short steps, we've taken our application and deployed to this microservice. I'll just highlight up here, 2014. This is when this application was written. This is kind of before microservices were really a really big subject. We did this pretty much blind at Apache TomEE. We knew we wanted to have an executable. We didn't really know what a microservice was at that time. And so we were actually creating a microservice without knowing it in 2014. And so TomEE has actually been able to create a really lightweight microservice since actually way before 2014. So if you're looking to just jump in and create your first microservice, download this project, run it up, and just see how simple things are. Go to the community, and you know, we'll help you get that up and running as quickly as possible. So yeah, the microprofile. Why do we need the microprofile? You've seen what TomEE is already, and now we're moving into the microprofile. And why do we feel we need a microprofile? Well, you saw on the TomEE table, we actually have a few more technologies that people are generally using today. And through several discussions with some of the other vendors out there, it became very, very apparent that there was kind of a need for a new profile. So we've had the full profile from Oracle, we had the web profile from Oracle, and we're all thinking, well, you know, with this microservices, you're actually shipping everything along with your application. So how do we reduce this to the bare minimum that people are actually going to use in their microservices? And we found similarities with other companies and other vendors. And we believe as vendors in the EE community that we're not competitors. We're all working towards a greater goal. You know, we share the market. It's a huge, huge market, and we really don't feel like we're in competition with any of the other vendors out there. We actually feed off each other, so we innovate and share information. All our projects are open source, and we care very much about our community. So it's not about making a project that's going to dominate the market and take over the world. I don't think EE is about that. EE is about sharing and coexisting with each other. So yeah, we quickly realized that there's things that we needed to reduce and things we needed to do. And during this time when Oracle weren't really pushing forward with EE, we felt the need to actually create our own initiative. And so we started basically a collaborative website, MicroProfile I0, which is where we're going to collaborate and define what we believe the microprofile should be. I'll just pop over to that, load that up. It's nothing more than a landing page. You know, please do visit. Just have a quick read of what we've got and take the survey. So this is what we're really interested in at the moment is, what are you interested in? We don't want to create a web profile that isn't what everybody else wants. We're vendors and we can be a bit blinkered. And so we want to actually ask the wider community, what do you want the microprofiles to be? And you can join us. So you can actually become a contributor on a project. There are many key figures involved in the project. You can go through and have a look at the people that actually contribute into this. And I'm sure you're seeing some very, very familiar faces from the EE community that have already contributed to the MicroProfile project. I'll just pop back to my presentation. All right, there we are. So in the meantime, we've had to come up with what the microprofile is. So as we're waiting for the results to accumulate from these surveys, obviously we wanted to make a start. And so our start is the release of 1.0, which was actually released at Java 1. So the announcement was made. Here is the release 0.1, and we literally just have JAX-RS, CDI, and JSON. And so September 2016, all we need to say we're microprofile ready is an application server that can deliver these three technologies. And this is kind of key to where we're starting with microprofile. It's certainly not where we're going to end. Our goal is to take whatever we define as a collaborative effort to be the microprofile and get it standardized. We are going to be moving towards some kind of foundation. That's likely to be the Eclipse Foundation. I'll get onto that in a minute. But we definitely want to make some kind of JCP standard and standardize the microprofile in a similar way that we've had the full profile and the web profile. So we've already seen TomEE and what TomEE is. Where do we stand now in the web profile scene? Well, we've actually got the TomEE JAX-RS version, which contains everything that the web profile has and more. And this is something that we're going to be working on at Apache TomEE, is to actually create a distribution that is reduced to the bare minimum. Right now, if you want to create a microprofile service, then you would need to use the TomEE JAX-RS version or web profile version, and you can use the plugin classifier to make sure that you're only using that specific version when you're running your application. So we have that today. This is TomEE today. But we don't want to leave it there. As I said, we want to collaborate, and we want you to collaborate. So we're looking at building a community around the MicroProfile. So I'm inviting you now to come along and join MicroProfile.io, get involved in the community, and help us actually create this standard that needs to be something that you want it to be. So everybody's going to have their own opinions, and we want to get as many opinions in the MicroProfile discussion as possible. So you're all important in this. This is something you can all be involved in. We can all work together to make the MicroProfile exactly what it's supposed to be and keep as many people happy as possible. There is no silver bullet when it comes to creating an application server. Everyone is going to have their own tastes and flavors, and this is why we're working together with other providers and vendors to achieve this. I'm going to play this quick video. I don't know how well it will come across, but it's one of my favorites. Okay, so this is the internet. What we don't want is to pull the wool over people's eyes. So basically, if you don't know what MicroProfile is, the only way you're really going to find out what MicroProfile is to actually join the community and be informed. So don't be the IT crowd outside of the group. Actually come along and join the discussion. So you'll find the link on the MicroProfile website here again posted. And this is basically just a Google discussion group where all the collaboration effort that is appearing on the MicroProfile front is in a public fashion. So we don't want to hide anything. Nothing is going to be behind closed doors. Everything that we will do is going to be published through the or discussed through the Google groups. You're all welcome to come and join this group and come along and see what we're doing and steer us in the right direction and add your input to this discussion. So your voice is important. Don't think it isn't. It's very easy to come along, talk to the guys that are involved, tell us what you feel is important, and we will discuss that in an open fashion at the groups. And so through this, you're going to help us prioritize everything that's available today. So I'm not going to rattle through this list. You can read this list. These are the kind of things that we're interested in knowing from you. These technologies are all available today. Some of them are popular. Some of them are more popular than others. Some of them are unpopular. But we want to know what you feel is most important for the next iteration of MicroProfile. So taking these three technologies and adding the next level. And you just saw on the MicroProfile website, we have this survey. The only way we're going to gather this information is by collecting it from you guys. So, I really mean it. You're all welcome to come along. Please take the survey and let us know. And we will genuinely prioritize our development efforts towards the community and what the community requires. And we're not just listening to ourselves. I added this. I know some people are a bit in contention with the Java EE Guardians. I know Reza quite well. He's a great guy. I feel like he maybe broke away from EE and stamped his feet a little bit too much. But that's only because he's passionate. I understand his passion, and he really does want to see the EE progress. And so we're not, or don't consider ourselves a breakaway group. Although we are technically a breakaway group from EE Guardians, our goals are the same, and that is to move EE along. And as I previously mentioned, Java 1, everybody knows that EE is now back on the plate. I personally don't feel like it was ever off the plate. I think they were just taking time to make some decisions internally, and there was some reshuffling. And Reza Rahman was a bit of a fallout from that reshuffling, and he started the Java EE Guardians group. If you go to the groups, the Google groups, you will see that we've actually posted the Java EE Guardians results in the groups, because we're as interested in finding out what people want as the EE Guardian. So we're not a closed door organization. We're listening to others as well. It's not just going to be us stamping our feet in our direction. We want everyone to stamp their feet together and make sure this goes in the right direction for everybody. And so once we have all these collections of survey results, we can pick and choose probably everything, but we can certainly prioritize. So we're going to pick from top to bottom. So the most wanted feature is definitely going to be included in the next iteration, and so on and so forth. So we'll be not excluding anything particularly from the MicroProfile, but certainly including it in the priorities that you guys define. So that's why it's important to us. It gives us an agenda. So our release schedule. Well, I've already mentioned Java 1. That was the release of the 1.0 MicroProfile. So that's our official stamp now to say those three technologies I've mentioned, they are in the project profile, sorry, and they're not going to change. So that's our baseline. We're really deeply in the process now of moving towards a foundation. We kind of reduced it down to the Apache Software Foundation and the Eclipse Foundation. I think from the groups, everyone's pretty much decided now that it's going to be the Eclipse Foundation. And so what we'll be doing is hosting the MicroProfile itself and the specifications through the Eclipse Foundation. What that does is it gives us a bit of weight. It gives us the copyright. It makes sure all the legal entities are in place to ensure that the MicroProfile isn't hijacked by somebody else, and will never belong to any particular organization. So the key feature behind moving to a foundation is to say, we are giving this to everybody. Nobody is going to have a handle on this. We're all going to have a handle on this. So it will belong to me, it will belong to you, and it will belong to everybody forever. No one is ever going to steal it from us. And MicroProfile 1.1 and 1.2, obviously way in the future. I would like MicroProfile 1.1 to have the bare minimum that the community desires from the whole MicroProfile thing. And so early next year, we will have MicroProfile 1.1, which will have all the things that everybody to that point has decided is the most important part of the profile. So the TomEE schedule, how does TomEE fit into this? Well, MicroProfile 1.0, I've already said, is the web profile version of 7.0.1. And this is kind of, for me, currently too bloated. And so the next iteration is going to be, for us, in this period of the move to 1.1, taking our current distribution of TomEE and removing the technologies that are not the MicroProfile. That's actually quite a lot of work because we've done so much work sewing everything together. It's not actually going to be that easy to extract the additional technologies that we put together. But that's our goal by the end of the year, to have a proper MicroProfile 1.0 distribution of Apache TomEE 7.0.2, 7.0.3, whatever it may be. And so that profile will only contain whatever the MicroProfile is defining. And if you wanted to add something yourself, then you can. And then we want to stay in line with the releases of MicroProfile. So as MicroProfile progresses, we will strive to achieve a release of the web profile, MicroProfile version of Apache TomEE. So everything we do is now going to be in the 7 version. So Apache TomEE 7 is our EE7 capable server. And we have the 1.7.4, which is the EE6 version of the server. That's just going to be a maintenance release. So, you know, MicroProfile is future orientated. So we're going to be using our future orientated version of the application server. So TomEE 7 is geared towards Java 7, but more Java 8. So we don't really want people to start using Java 7 with it. Move straight onto Java 8. And our service around the corner. One of our developers, Roman, is working really, really hard at Apache now to make sure that we have the 7.02 release very, very soon. And that's just a stabilization of the EE7 and Java 8 version of the Apache TomEE project. The backing Tomcat to that is the 8 version of Tomcat. So if you're running a Tomcat 8.0 application and you want to test it on TomEE, then use the 7.01, 7.02 version of TomEE. All these resources are available for you to visit and download and use at your will. I've been working really hard the last couple of weeks on the MicroProfile Conference Demo application, which is taking all the things we've been doing and adding that to an application in order to show you what we believe the future of the MicroProfile is going to be and how to put all that together. So a nice little application for you to download. I'll actually move on to that in a minute. Here's just a quick screenshot. Obviously, it's a MicroProfile 1.0 compliant application that will run on all the vendors. So all the vendors that are included in the MicroProfile, this application will run on all of their application servers out of the box. That's something that we're most definitely going to follow up on, and that is every release we do is going to run on all the vendors. So everyone that's collaborating on the MicroProfile application, their application server is going to run it out of the box. That's quite important. I'm certainly not, I mean, I don't know what these colors look like to you. I find them quite pleasing, but I'm not a UI designer by any standards. I'm more of a back-end application developer. And this, for me, was kind of a move towards Angular 2.0. So it's fully Angular 2.0 based. It's been a big learning curve for myself to actually start my very first Angular 2.0 application. I've used Angular in the past and Dojo and various other JavaScript frameworks. I have to say the 2.0, huge amount of boilerplate, but once you get past the boilerplate, Angular 2 is absolutely fantastic, brilliant. It's certainly the right way to go when it comes to developing UI or web-based applications. And so I've tried to make the project a kind of template for Angular 2.0 as well. So if you're just starting to use the Angular 2.0 framework and you want to look for an application that's utilizing it, then I've tried to put in all the best practices that I've learned literally over the last couple of weeks into this application. The application itself is Apache version 2 licensed. It's completely open source. So you can go to the GitHub MicroProfile and download the MicroProfile Conference application. And this will showcase all the vendors. So all the vendors have contributed to this. We're all in there. These are the vendors. So we're not talking just Apache through TomEE Tribe and no one else. Payara is on board, Red Hat's on board, IBM is on board, the London Java community is on board, Hammock's on board, and Sol Java's on board. So these are the initial contributors to the MicroProfile. There's absolutely no reason why anyone else can't join us on the MicroProfile venture. The more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. But you can see there's certainly some weight behind what we're doing, and people are genuinely interested in what we're doing. So this is MicroProfile. I'm just going to fire up the conference application and show you how we've made it. And this is literally the last sort of 5 to 10 minutes of the talk now. When I find my IntelliJ, there's my IntelliJ. So this is the application as it currently stands. Each vendor has created their own microservice. And so in a real sense of developing microservices, we'll probably be running our own developer environments that are completely separate from each other and just swapping the public surface-facing area of our microservice for the other one to utilize. Obviously, because we're collaborating together, we've put everything here in a simple package for you so you can download. But these microservices themselves have been developed by each vendor. TomEE Tribe, for example, developed the speaker application, and the other vendors have created their own service application. And so we can run these separately. And if you actually visit the GitHub site, you'll be directed straight to the ASCII doc README, which is basically just telling you, how this application is made up, how to run the application, and how to run the services independently of each other. But obviously, while we're developing the application, it would be nice if we can run all the services together. So I've just added to the final web application a means of running all the services in the environment and testing against the same server. And this is going to be in the web application. So I have a little README in there, which basically tells you how to build this thing. And me being lazy again, I'm just going to copy the command line, open up a console on my MicroProfile project. And I'm going to run it. So there's not enough time to go in really in depth in how the application is made up, and we're all developers. The code's there for everyone to see and hack on. I would welcome help from people. So if you're a Angular 2 hack and you really know your stuff, then please come along and totally rip apart everything I've done. I'm happy to have you do that. The application will actually download Node and install it for you and configure everything. So you shouldn't have any prerequisites on your system. This should just literally download and build the application as is. Because it downloads Node, the first run might take a few minutes as it downloads all the packages that are required. It then builds the application using a gulp file. So gulp is just basically a JavaScript build tool, and this will compile all the code that's written in TypeScript. So no one writes in JavaScript anymore. This was kind of new to me because I'm very, very used to writing stuff in JavaScript, and literally picked up TypeScript several weeks ago. I went, what the hell is TypeScript? It's brilliant. It's basically taking a step forward, in fact, a huge step forward from JavaScript, and type safing all your variables and declarations within your JavaScript, all the things that people commonly made mistakes on in JavaScript. And so this is basically now just running the application, and you can see each of the services deploying in its own runtime. So this is currently fairly TomEE specific, but each vendor is capable of running this application in their own application server. This for me was just a case of running. Oh, and look, I've forgot to shut down my microservice in the background, so I've now got a port conflict. So I should shut that down. Actually, just restart this. Die. So yeah, I had my microservice that was running in the background, started up my application here, and obviously had a port conflict because that microservice is using some of the same ports that this application uses. Pretty easy mistake to make. If you ever get a port conflict, obviously something's running in the background. So this is just a little bit quicker after the initial start now. Now it's going to fire up all the services. Now, the usual scenario for this would obviously each microservice would be deployed independently of each other. So they would all be deployed in their own namespace, basically, their own domain. But while you're developing, obviously, you want to talk to all the services at the same time. And so this is literally just kind of a monolithic application that's utilizing microservices within the monolithic application. So if you're, in fact, it was a tweet by Daniel Bryant this morning. He's saying that, you know, if you're not in a DevOps environment that is supportive of microservices, then don't try and fight it. Well, I'm kind of, that's not fair to Daniel. It's not exactly what he was saying, but yeah, I'm kind of saying there's nothing to stop you taking a monolithic application like this one is right now running in front of us, that is actually made up of microservices. So when the time comes, I can take my microservices and I can deploy them dynamically to my cloud. I can take each of these different microservices and deploy them in their own different environments, running on their own applications, however I need to deploy it, and then utilize that in my UE application, which I can also cluster. And so even though your DevOps might not currently support a microservice architecture, there's no reason why your application can't. And so using the MicroProfile conference application as a template for creating a monolithic application that is easily breakdownable into microservices, this could be key to your future development. So you know, do pop along to that website, download this code and have a look at it yourself. That's all fired up. And this is just going to be on localhost 8080. And so this is basically an application that has just loaded the users list, or the speakers list, sorry. It's a very, very simple conference application. It's heavily in development, so it's not finished. Again, anyone that's good at this kind of thing, please come along, join the project, and start making those pull requests. It's just a way of searching for users, speakers, and displaying the sessions that they're going to be talking on. Aaron Gupta, everyone knows Aaron Gupta. If you don't, read his books, they're brilliant. And this is a talk he did at, I believe, Java 1, might have been somewhere else. But it's a very simple application, and all the information here that's being displayed is being displayed through backend microservices. Although they're all running in the same runtime environment now, they could be anywhere on the planet. There's nothing restricting that. The design has been designed to pull information in a very transparent manner. So again, just information provided and links back. That's a very, very simple web application. And that will showcase MicroProfile as it stands today, all on a TomEE. I should go back to you guys. And that is pretty much MicroProfile. So I think we have a few moments for questions. I'm not sure how long. I know I'm not allowed to run over at the end.
That's cool. Yeah, we have a tight schedule, unfortunately. But
yeah, that's fair. Because
yeah. So yeah, some questions. Actually, I've got a question. Well, actually, first of all, let me also mention that later on today, or depending on which time zone you're in, maybe tomorrow, we have a session or another session around MicroProfile. Let me,
David, yeah,
grab the session. It's actually a panel. It was originally David, but we've got a few more people on that. Let me.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Grab the latest session schedule. So it is at, here we go. It is the second session in the Americas time zone, which is midnight on the 27th, so midnight UTC time, which is 8 o'clock Eastern time. And it's going to be a panel, and we've actually got a bunch of people from the respective organizations that Andy mentioned from Red Hat and Pyara and people like that. And it's going to be a panel. So if you have any questions about MicroProfile, we can have some great discussions on that. One question from me, Andy, actually, and if anyone has any questions online or in Band or Jug, we can pop there in a second. Anyone online, drop it in IRC. There was a lot of talk about Java EE at Java 1, which was really, really great to hear, at least. certainly to hear. We'll see what happens. But in terms of the fact that it has kind of split now, we have got Oracle trying to do their own thing in Java EE 8. We have the Guardians. We have the MicroProfile. What's bringing it all together?
That for us is going to be the JCP. So our goal, although we're going to be hosting this at the Eclipse Foundation, we want to make a collaborative work that's going to be posted to the JCP and make it a standard. So Oracle, we're genuinely not looking at breaking away from Oracle on this. We were just, treading in that stagnant water for a while, and we wanted to make a few waves in it and say, hang on a minute, this technology is in no way dead on it. And it's been hard. I've done several talks and I've had people say, yeah, but isn't EE dead? I'm like, no, I don't know where you're getting this. There's some awful rumors out there. The way that I would used to explain that in the background was that Oracle were just taking a step back, discussing their future. They weren't sure of where they wanted to go. And so they weren't, publicly talking about it because they didn't want to make any false statements. I'm quite good friends with Heather Van Cura from the JCP, and had some really good conversations with her. And obviously, she can't disclose everything that goes on. But her opinion at the time was that Java EE wasn't dead. They're just having discussions, and people might be trying to make waves for the wrong reasons. And I kind of felt that was the right at the time as well. That it wasn't dead. They were just taking a step back. EE8 is actually really, really good. EE6 was good, EE7 even better, and EE8 is just, I can't stress it enough, it's a fantastic technology. I just love it. I think it's got a huge, huge future. And, there's charts being produced out there where we've got a sliding scale of interest, and it's not a sliding scale of interest, it's a sliding scale of, we've done a lot, how much more do we need to do? So obviously as the input to the community diminishes, because this thing is so good that you don't need to add anything, those charts are going to be producing, as far as I'm concerned, false information. So, there was not a lack of input from the community as such. It was a case of, we've reached a stage that we're really quite happy with, and let's get this thing finalized. And how are we going to finalize it? With a view to moving towards a cloud-based architecture. So they didn't want this monolithic future that everyone is planning for EE. And actually, MicroProfile is just proof that you can take EE and make something really small using the technologies within the EE spectrum. And we're going to give that back. So we're not taking anything away from Oracle. We're very, very happy to be working with Oracle. And like I say, Java 1 was just announcement after announcement after announcement that EE has never been dead, and I kind of feel a bit vindicated in saying that it's never been dead. It was kind of on the back burner for a while they were discussing how to move this thing forward. We're talking like a $4 billion industry revolving around EE. No one would throw that away in the right sense of mind.
And I think the connection with the JCP, as you mentioned, is actually very key in order to keep it, part of the core enterprise specs and things like that. Would you say the JCP, with the inactivity on Oracle's part for the last year or so, would you say that the JCP was actually part of that downfall, in the fact that the governance that Oracle had over the enterprise was actually stopping others from pushing EE forward?
Yeah, I kind of think so. I think, no one's going to know what internal struggles are going on at Oracle. There was definitely some direction in what are we going to be doing in the cloud? We want this cloud-based infrastructure. Does EE fit within this infrastructure? And that took a lot of time. It took them a year. So in that year, it wasn't that they were not discussing EE. They just weren't discussing EE particularly in a public fashion. It was kind of a closed door affair. And obviously, for the outside world, there are some arguments. Several people left Java. And again, I'll mention Reza He's an absolutely fantastic guy. Really love the guy. He is extremely passionate about EE, and he felt a little bit upset about the situation, the internal situation. He's under a non-disclosure. He's not going to tell us what was going on. But you know, we've seen obviously that something was going on, and it was, you know, really for the good of the company. I think the company's come out really strongly behind EE at Java 1. And anyone that's been in the EE infrastructure knows that this technology is certainly not dead. There are hundreds of thousands of companies using it. They cannot throw this thing away, and they really shouldn't throw this thing away. You know, it's just a great way forward. And the quicker we move back into the JCP, and the JCP becomes active, and Oracle allows the JCP to become active again in this field, which they basically made a, you know, really strong stamped declaration at Java 1. We're backing the JCP. This is certainly, you know, something we're going to be pushing on. Yeah, totally welcoming for it. So don't, you know, don't feel like we're splitting away or trying to move away from Oracle in any sense. We're actually all very keen to move this back to Oracle as quickly as possible.
And I think your connection with the JCP actually strongly, you know, supports that as well, right? That's the epitome of keeping tight with Oracle's best.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the JCP is most definitely our bridge to Oracle, and vice versa. You know, Oracle goes through the JCP to us, and we go back. And when I say us, I'm talking about everybody, not just, you know, vendors or me, or, you know, everybody. If you want to get involved, then, you know, keep backing the JCP, keep signing up with the JCP. But, you know, don't neglect to visit us and fill out those surveys and help us move this forward together. So yeah.
Awesome. Question from, we'll take one question from IRC. MPA Stevens says, is Java EE to Java EE MicroProfile a comparable kind of size reduction to, say, Java SE full to maybe one of the compact profiles? Or compact one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, the chart I displayed at the start with all the EE technologies. You know, not all application servers have all those technologies, but if you want to get certified at Oracle, then you have to have those technologies in your application server. And the idea behind MicroProfile is to say, hang on a minute, you know, we might have 12, 13 different technologies in our application server, but we only really want 4 or 5. And so the MicroProfile is shrinking those down. Now, those libraries, they're not actually they're not huge. So when we're talking about shrinking, we're not talking specifically about shrinking the size of the application server, notably, although TomEE is, as you know, very small. It's just Tomcat based. We're about 50 megabytes of footprint, which is nothing. You know, it's trivial in today's size comparison. We have a really small memory footprint, so it's like 256 megabytes of memory. We pass the TCK, so that's thousands of back-to-back tests within a very small memory footprint. And TomEE's always been sort of keen to keep our footprint as small as possible. So yeah, it is. It's like stripping down, taking off the stuff that people aren't using today and making it more lightweight. That's just going to improve the speed of things. So rather than having to collaborate with 5 or 6 technologies, we're going to be collaborating with currently 3. That will keep the processes lightweight. It will keep the memory footprint even smaller. I don't know if you actually saw TomEE Tribe at the Java 1. We had a full stack Pi demo. So we had a really smart setup with basically 2 data centers and a control center, all set up on Pis, running huge amounts of data, crunching huge numbers, huge amounts of information, and throwing all that out onto a Kibana for display. That kind of proves that, you know, TomEE is very lightweight, very small. You could actually use that in production if you wanted to. Really great, fantastic demo made up by several other guys at TomEE Tribe. You know, check that out. I've got one sat on my desk over here, sort of the lights blinking. It's a fantastic way of learning how to set up data centers. But yeah, again, we're working together. I'm not going to say TomEE is the best. TomEE is a flavor. You know, everyone has their own cup of coffee and their favorite cup of coffee. Go and taste them all. But I kind of like the flavor of TomEE Tribe.
Cool. Let's see if there's any questions. We're actually a few minutes. Next speaker's running a few minutes late, so we can go a little bit over. Are there any questions from the Bangalore user group?
Yep. Hi, Andy. This is Vivek here. Just a bit curious to know. See, we have when EE came forth a couple of years earlier, right? See, it came with a bang, and we had other competing technologies coming into the arena. So, in similar lines, so right now we have we talk about microservices with Docker kind of container-based microservices, right? So, how does this particular MicroProfile and TomEE either complement or compete with such technologies?
Well, the executable jar file that I showed, that was basically to show you we've packaged up the application server and your application in a single jar file. The next step of popping that onto say a Java 8 image of Docker, simple. You're literally just copying that across and running that on so all you would have is your base image extending Java 8. So there's a Java 8 image out there, and you would literally deploy that jar file onto a Java 8 image, and bang, you have a fully running Docker service with your application. So TomEE is actually in that jar file. You ship that to a naked Java 8 image of Docker, and you're up and running. That's it. So very, very easy steps. It's in my pipeline on the conference project to take everything and put it into Docker images. And so there will be a Maven profile, probably called Docker, which will just Dockerize everything. And that can all be done and automated from Maven. So there's nothing to, so that step to the Java archive file, that is the important step to say, this is what I'm going to deploy to Docker. This is my application that I'm going to run on Docker. And that to go from that to Docker is very, very easy. So that was the point I was making. I suppose I didn't make it enough at the point I was running that application, but that was just to show you I'm packaging everything ready to go to Docker. Does that answer your question?
Yep, you do. You did throw some light around there. So one other question I have is, again, comparison of technologies. So see, we had the EJB 2.0 and 2.1 coming into the picture earlier, and which got subdued by whatever Spring came forth with, the lightweight or the bean-based components and things like that. So how do you think right now the direction would be, at least in your opinion, wherein see, we are kind of trying to standardize things here, but we have Spring themselves talking about microservices with Spring Boot or things like that. So
I would go back to the cup of coffee. I think the technology is really comparable, and they've definitely fed off each other. So Spring has fed off EE, and EE has fed off Spring. So there's been innovation on both sides, and I hate comparing Spring and EE as kind of in a competition. I think on this planet there's billions of users, and we have a massive market, and I don't think it's a case of trying to dominate the market over anyone else. I think it's a case. It's the point is giving people different flavors of coffee to choose from. So your Java beans, they might be different from my Java beans. I would always say try both. I'm never going to turn around to a Spring advocate and say Spring's rubbish, because it isn't. I've used Spring. I think Spring is very well suited to monolithic applications, and they are making with Spring Boot obviously the direction towards microservices, and it works very, very well. But it's not working any differently to EE. So EE works equally as well. It's what you're used to. So if you spent your life learning Spring, then by all means carry on using Spring if you're happy with Spring. Only move away from it if you don't want it. And the same with EE. If you spent your life behind EE, there's absolutely no reason for you to move over to Spring. They're both very, very comparable in what they achieve at the end of the day. And
I think that's really important to say, actually, because you know, that everyone, even if one is, what's to say that one is better than the other anyway? Because
Absolutely, yeah.
everyone's different, and everyone deserves the right to choose. Otherwise, there would just be the way in life, and we only have one flavor.
I think it's healthy, you know, a healthy kind of competition. It drives the innovation in the market. It keeps us on our toes, and we keep them on their toes. And you know, if you're happy with a particular, you know, car, you're going to stick with it, aren't you? So that's all I'm saying is, if you're happy with EE, then keep using EE. If you were stuck with J2 EE, then by all means, you know, forget that. That was just awful, and it's completely gone. You know, Java EE6, EE7, EE8. They are completely different monsters, and they're friendly monsters from Monsters Inc. As far as I'm concerned. You know, they're big, cuddly, and they do everything that you need them to do.
Okay, so thank you very much. We have to stop as Alex speaker. Oh, that's sorry, Bangalore, Java. Sorry, there we go. I was hearing a big echo. So Andy, thank you very much for your session. It was a really interesting session, and I think a very good one to show the overview of where MicroProfile sits. So thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks.
Our pleasure. Thanks.
Have a great show.
Thank you very much. Right then.